Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Addressing Public Sector Data Protection Challenges on a Back-to-School Budget. Today's event is brought to you by Unitrends and produced by Actual Tech Media. Now, before I introduce you to today's expert presenter, there's just a few things that we first need to cover. You should know that we want this to be an educational event for those in the state, local, and educational institutions. We want you to get all your questions answered, so please use the questions box there in the GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll be doing a dedicated Q&A session at the end of today's event. We also have a number of handouts available for download in your audience console. It's there that you'll find the slide deck from today's presentation that you can download and review after the event. You'll also find a Unitrends technical brief on the 6 ways to achieve complete backup and continuity on a school budget. And finally, the Unitrends solution overview that covers everything you need to know about the Unitrends solution. So make sure you download those handouts and review those after the event. And then finally, we'll be awarding an Amazon $300 gift card to one lucky attendee on today's live event. If you're watching this on demand, I'm sorry the drawing has already occurred. Full prize terms and conditions can be found at events.actualtechmedia.com. And with that, I'm excited to introduce you to today's presenter. That is Mr. Adam Margette, Technical Specialist at Unitrends. Adam, take it away.
David, thank you so much, and thanks everyone who was able to carve out some time today to join us. Recognize that we're kind of all adjusting to a new reality, and making the most of a really tricky situation. But from our stance here at Unitrends, we think that now more than ever, data protection is critically important. And for a long time, for the last 30 years, we've been serving a number of different industries, but the SLED folks, state and local government, as well as educational customers, have always been near and dear to us here at Unitrends. So we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the tools that we have to enable folks specifically in that vertical to address some of the unique challenges. And if there are folks that have joined us here today that aren't necessarily with a SLED entity, hopefully there will still be some tools and some tips and some things to think about that you can bring back to your organization as well. But in kind of driving the focus of today's presentation, we really were leaning on our experience and what we've seen working with customers in the SLED space. What are some of their most common problems, and how can we help them to really optimize their situation? They're kind of unique industries in that in a lot of cases you're subject to high demands of availability, increased regulatory compliance, and in a lot of cases being given less budget and less staff with which to accomplish these goals or objectives. It's a little bit, I think, of a paradox. I used to work for a reseller with CDWG and worked with a lot of customers in the space. And if they didn't use all of their year's budget, rather than saying, yeah, congratulations, you were really efficient or fiscally conservative, they say, well, I guess you didn't need it, so we're not going to give it to you next year. I always thought it was a little bit of a paradox. But here today, we're going to jump right in and really talk about how Unitrends is enabling data protection, and hopefully in a cost-effective fashion. As David had mentioned, my name is Adam Margette. I'm a technical specialist. I've been with the company for just under 4 years now. So a quick look at our agenda today. Wanted to introduce Unitrends for folks that aren't as familiar or maybe just getting exposed to us as a company for the first time, and then talk a little bit about ransomware protection. Certainly a really significant threat. If 2020 is the year of coronavirus, 2019 was certainly the year of ransomware. We have cloud services and a number of integrations with public clouds. And then we also want to talk about protecting remote devices and SaaS data. We do have some resources, some programs for the audience that we're going to share towards the end, as well as taking any Q&A that comes in on the line here. So without further ado, let's jump right in and kind of get started with, who is Unitrends? As I had mentioned, we've been in this space for a little over 30 years now, actually founded originally in 1989, and we kind of joke we're one of the industry's best kept secrets. If you haven't heard of us before, we're not a huge marketing organization. You wouldn't go to your local airport and see Unitrends plastered from floor to ceiling. A lot of that investment we're driving back into the people and the product itself. And over the 30 years More than 30,000 customers across the globe have come to trust Unitrends for their data protection and disaster recovery needs. We're helping those customers protect an aggregate excess of 2 exabytes of data. That's roughly 5% of all the global internet traffic in about a year's time. So a tremendously large amount of data, but really key to enabling and delivering some of our disaster recovery solutions is the Unitrends Cloud. It's a proprietary cloud platform. We are going to talk a little bit more about the Unitrends Cloud later on, but you can see roughly on the map there, those red pinpoints, the countries and the regions in which those cloud services are offered, roughly the location of those cloud data centers. But what really stands out to me here on this slide is the investment and the emphasis that we put on our customer support and that customer satisfaction team. That 98% customer satisfaction rating is not a stat that we cherry-picked from our best month, say a year and a half ago. It's an ongoing rolling metric that we're measuring every day. Again, it's something that we place a tremendous amount of emphasis on. Our research and development folks are co-located, or our support folks, excuse me, are co-located with our research and development teams, really offering a unified experience for our customers in that you call in and you're reporting a bug on a new release. That engineer has the benefit of being able to hop across the hall to the individuals that wrote the code. They're looking for a workaround for a new issue or trying to solve a problem in a new way. They can jump right across and really collaborate. It's a tremendous environment to really foster that communication and that collaboration. Ultimately, it's led to a very, very happy customer. So I think that for a lot of folks coming over to our platform, they've got a tremendous amount of confidence in the organization behind them. And I think that that's critically important given kind of the nature of the services and the solutions that we provide. So when we kind of think about who's a good fit for Unitrends or what's a great fit for Unitrends, there is no one exact answer. Well, again, our focus was more so on the SLED space today. We've been able to meet the needs and kind of the unique requirements of a number of different organizations, regardless of really their industry vertical or their size. There are some smaller nonprofits that have found just what they needed with Unitrends, as well as some larger companies, significant utility providers, Fortune 1000 organizations that as well were able to meet their rigorous demands for data protection. I think that what this speaks to me is that there's a tremendous amount of flexibility in how you can deploy and architect a solution with Unitrends, a lot of customization available to find the unique needs to meet your data protection requirements, really regardless of what they look like. And from a SLED space more specifically, we talked a little bit about this in the intro, but we've seen a lot of these challenges in working through with our customers in the space. Constrained budgets, we're getting less money year over year. Shrinking or small staffs, we've got a limited number of resources for a tremendously huge count, whether it's students or constituents, faculty, and so forth. But as well, you've got no break when it comes to providing that availability. Heavy regulations from a compliance standpoint have changed the way in which we must think about, in some cases, long-term data retention or archival of that data, ensuring that it is safe, immutable, but also retrievable, and certainly targeted by ransomware. The public sector has been a target in huge amounts, and it's really kind of a scary situation, some of the sophistication behind these new attacks and kind of their evolution over the last couple of years. But ultimately, what we're seeing is that for a lot of folks, they're not able to meet the SLAs or the service level agreements that they've promised to the business units that they serve. And we all know that the downtime is incredibly costly. It impacts productivity, it impacts the organization being able to move forward. In some cases, the IT staff is not focused on end user experience or driving different projects that would increase productivity or open up new opportunities. They're focused on, or more so, having to babysit their solution. It's kind of what we consider those low value tasks, the day-to-day tuning and management of systems, kind of making sure that precarious stack of backup and DR technology is operable and working as it should be. And in some cases, we see gaps in protection as well. On average, about 11% of the data within the data center is going without adequate protection or backups, and even worse at remote office locations, satellite campuses, or branch locations where about 15% of that remote data is going without protection. So a few kind of different challenges here that are all a result, in some cases, of complexity, of constrained budgets. But we recognize that there's really a lot of different factors here that prevent these challenges. So when we think about Unitrends and we talk about, our all-in-one solution or all-in-one technology, your current backup and disaster recovery stack may look something like this here, where you've pieced together different elements of the solution locally, as well as started to explore cloud technology, and you've stitched together a number of different vendors: your on-premise servers, virtualization layer, operating system, the back-end storage for deduplication and compression, cloud infrastructure, cloud replication technology, the ability to just test our recovery. We've pieced together almost this Frankenstein of sorts, and for a lot of our customers, it's opened them up to unnecessary complexity and risk. We talked about that with those low-value IT tasks, just that tuning and management, or even the space between, jumping from different interfaces, having to open up different GUIs, the juggling of multiple support contracts, support processes, and even occasionally that finger pointing between vendors. You're having trouble getting a restore to kick off, call up the software vendor and they say, no, that sounds like an issue with the storage device. So when you reach out to those folks, they're saying the same thing, but in reverse, and you're just looking for answers. You're just looking for a recovery. At Unitrends, it's our goal to deliver the technology and the solutions to enable our customers to break down those silos. So when we think about an all-in-one solution, for your hardware, software, and cloud technology, you've got a single vendor and a single line of support with which to reference. And from a compatibility standpoint, you should have confidence. You're not going to have some of those risks of interoperability because one vendor has developed all of the platforms here and designed them with that in mind here. So you're not necessarily going to have that, hey, if we apply a patch update here, does that risk breaking a connection? You've got a unified suite of products from the same developer or manufacturer. So when we talk about that portfolio and what it enables, there are really four key pillars. But with Unitrends, it's going to start with local backup and recovery, where there's flexibility in how you can deploy. You can leverage our appliances, the Recovery Series, which is a purpose-built backup appliance. It has the compute memory storage and the backup software already pre-tuned and preloaded for the environment. So you simply rack it, stack it, give it an IP, and you're ready to start taking backups. Now, if you're looking to leverage existing server and storage infrastructure, you can deploy Unitrends as a virtual appliance on top of your favorite hypervisor, so hardware or software for that local deployment. But regardless of what you deploy, you can protect over 250 versions of applications, operating systems, and hypervisors. As I had mentioned, we've been in this space for a while. Our compatibility matrix goes way, way back. I get a rise out of folks when we go to shows, and I tell folks we just discontinued our support for Windows NT like 6 months ago, and they're like, "What, Windows NT? Wow!" So we go a ways back, and especially for folks in the SLED space where you're maybe not always able to keep up on the latest version of an operating system or of a piece of software, Unitrends has your back, going way, way back in terms of that compatibility. Some of the solutions in the marketplace that have emerged more recently aren't going to have that same history or that same breadth of experience. So with those local solutions, you can protect your physical servers, virtual machines, application workloads, and storage, but it's critically important to get a copy of that data offsite to enable recovery. You can replicate backup copies from one Unitrends instance to another, but again, there's flexibility in where you can choose to have those recovered. If you've got a secondary location, a satellite campus, another office, you can replicate from one Unitrends appliance to another and set up that co-location as that hot site for DR. But you can also leverage public cloud infrastructure. You can deploy Unitrends software from the AWS or the Azure marketplace to receive those cloud backup copies, and you can perform DR into an AWS or an Azure cloud. Now, if you're looking to leverage the Unitrends cloud for offsite storage and recovery, that's kind of taking our shift down to the bottom left quadrant here, where again, the Unitrends cloud is a proprietary solution, so we are not AWS, we are not Azure. With that being said, we've really tuned our cloud to deliver a few key services for our users. The first being that long-term retention of data. So you can automate the retention of the backup copies in an environment that Unitrends is managing on the back end. And recovery from our cloud to retrieve that data, it's fully self-service with no egress fees. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Unitrends cloud, but it's important to note, I think, that you can archive and retrieve data as needed, completely self-service from the Unitrends cloud. Recovery in the Unitrends cloud is handled by our team. It's our disaster recovery as a service. The last pillar there, a hands-free failover and hosting process of mission-critical machines or even your entire data center in the event of a local outage or disaster, enabling that resiliency when the data center potentially is unreachable or has suffered a more significant or serious event. So a little bit about the portfolio. Do want to talk about ransomware, and it's certainly a significant threat. There were a number of really public and significant attacks last year, from Baltimore to Riviera Beach to the municipalities in Texas that were hit. And we've observed a number of different strains and a number of different strategies or techniques where in Florida, the attack proliferated and spread itself very, very quickly through a phishing link. An administrator in their police department clicked on a bad email attachment. Reverse engineering of the malware in Baltimore indicated that the attackers most likely had prior administrative level access to plant certain pieces that they needed to launch that attack successfully. So there were really some unique different situations, but we've seen, especially last year, an evolution in the sophistication of the techniques in some of these malware. And I think that it's clear that ransomware is not a prank or a spyware or a gimmick. It's a business, and these threat actors have real targets and significant ROI through their delivery methods. But the SLED space is certainly not exempt, and there were over 200 attacks, as reported by Emsisoft, a security provider, on U.S. SLED entities last year. Over 100 municipal governments and agencies, around 90 or so colleges and school districts. But when we think about the breakdown of the districts and the certain kind of subsets that were impacted, over 1,200 individual schools were impacted. The average downtime from these attacks, a little over a week, and the average cost of the attack, well over $100,000. This accounts for the folks that were able to successfully recover with minimal loss of productivity and data to some of those more significant, Baltimore's and Atlanta's attacks. But a lot of what we've seen, and this was documented by Sophos in their threat report, is that these new strains are getting incredibly creative, where they're trying to disable the VSS writers and backup utilities, antivirus installed on particular servers, delete backups right off of repositories. They're trying to close any loophole that there may be for recovery. And not just are we seeing ransomware strains being launched from known organizations, the proliferation of ransomware as a service, where you could contact through an Onion or a Tor site a developer of code, and for a small split of the profits, they will send you a kit that you can use to run your own exploits, has been made it really difficult to track and source the origins of some of these attacks. So it's a really kind of a bleak landscape, and a lot of the predictions that I've seen around, we're leveraging machine learning to catch behavior and spot infection. Can they kind of flip that artificial intelligence on its head and use that to disguise or issue a red herring to kind of hide or mask their behavior? 5G adoption and the proliferation of IoT devices potentially opens up new risks and new attack vectors. It's a long way of saying that we don't expect this problem to be going away anytime soon. So it's critically important to leverage a multi-layered cybersecurity policy, the user awareness training to help them be aware to catch phishing or malicious links. Certainly firewalls, antivirus, anomalous threat detection, all key pieces here. But in a lot of cases, it's going to be the backups that are your last line of defense. And at our perspective here at Unitrends, we've taken steps to really harden our environment between the point in which you're taking the backup and initiating the recovery. The first comes in our prevention, where the majority of binary is targeting Windows-based systems, Windows services, and Windows file extensions. Unitrends appliances are written on a hardened Linux kernel. And in addition to being frequently less targeted, Linux is a little bit more flexible in how you can architect out the storage partition. So we are landing our backup copies in immutable block storage. They are read-only. Once they are written, any changes to that data are written as a subsequent incremental. So even if An incremental backup contained ransomware or binary that is not enacting, or that is not starting to write to existing backup files within the partition. In our 30 years, we've never had an appliance taken down by ransomware or malware. So the backup environment itself has been hardened, but on the front end, we want to enable our customers to proactively kind of go on the offensive. There's a machine learning algorithm that every Unitrends appliance is equipped with, and it establishes baseline patterns of behavior for the clients that we are protecting across your network, the physical servers, the virtual machines, and so forth. When those patterns are broken, or when there's a significant enough rate of change that triggers an alert, and we're looking just beyond change as well, but if those thresholds are broken, it triggers an alert so you can investigate machines that are behaving anomalously and take the right steps if necessary to quarantine them, wipe them from the network, and restore them. And the last piece comes in confidence. Our testing engine, which we're going to talk about in just a moment, is testing and certifying backups down to the application level. So we're certifying the underlying application layer and data to provide that full confidence in, yes, we are going to be able to recover, and we have backups that are clean, usable points of restore. Just a little bit about that ransomware detection. Again, using these analytics to prevent that downtime on the front end. Again, we're looking at analyzing against that backup data, and over time, as the appliance continues to learn your environment, it's going to get smarter over time at establishing these patterns and reducing the amount of false positives. But what we're looking at are kind of change rates and also the Shannon entropy, or the overall randomness of the data. In some cases, it would be an indicator of encryption, but in this case, ransomware, as the files are being scrambled and encrypted. It's stancing for what kind of looks for random noise, not necessarily just ordered files. So it's really great for identifying some of those slow burning ransomware attacks. They're working their way through slowly. They don't want to use too much of your resources, send off an alert by using too much of your CPU. So they're kind of slow burning, making their way through the network. In some cases, we're able to catch those early and enable our users to go on the offensive. The recovery testing piece is what we call our data copy access, and it really enables three key functions. It's one of our customers' favorite aspects of their Unitrends solution. As you're building out data copy access, you're scheduling these procedures to utilize the backups that have already been taken and live on the appliance. So the first is enabling that recovery assurance testing, where in an isolated environment, we're going to spin up directly from those backups and execute, as I had mentioned, canned scripts against the application layer to certify their performance. You could run a test against your Active Directory's NTDS database service to make sure that, hey, if we're recovering from this AD backup, we're going to be able to authenticate and authorize our users. You can run SQL queries with expected outputs, run tests against the Windows IIS publishing service, make sure that we can publish our website if we recover this web server. So we're not just benchmarking for compliance, but you can simulate, as you're building out this test, exactly what recovery needs to look like by defining the boot order of machines, re-IPing the machines if necessary, reconfiguring the CPU and the network, and the networking of these machines. If the recovery target has different resource allocation than the host that you're running production on. So you can see kind of in that bottom right there, as you're breaking down the test, the different steps that we are going through as we're orchestrating these tests. It's taking you beyond that screenshot verification. Yes, machine booted. We're going a layer deeper, and you can test backups of physical workloads, virtual workloads, cloud-based workloads as well. A tremendous amount of possibilities here. In addition to the recovery testing, in which you'll get exportable compliance and application status reports, so you can easily hand those to president, business owner, compliance officer, or so forth, you can use data copy access to orchestrate or spin up an isolated lab environment as well. Instant Lab, which will bring the machines up as orchestrated, which you can use for development opportunities, running quick patch testing, and just create that sandbox as needed, play around with it, tear it down when you're done. The last piece is that because you're orchestrating out the steps for recovery, you can use it to orchestrate that failover. Once the data copy access job has been built and you certify the recovery location, if there's an issue with a production host, at the push of a button, you can fail over those workloads to the target as specified. So some really great functionality. And again, we want to encourage folks to go beyond that screenshot verification, especially when it comes to ransomware. You'll want to know the contents or what's going on in that backup file. Ransomware in most cases is not going to disable your boot volume and your operating system. They want you to be able to log in or boot the machine up so that if infected, that splash screen would hit and they would be able to attempt to extract their extortion requests. So we want to be able to certify the underlying data as well. For one of our customers in Indiana, Taylor Community Schools, ransomware protection was absolutely paramount. For these folks, they had a small IT staff, 3 folks that were responsible for 1,800 clients, the faculty, staff, and students, kind of from a number of townships that were central to the school's location. They were fully virtualized on Cisco UCS running VMware, but before deploying Unitrends, they were rotating LTO tapes offsite. They weren't able to test. Their backup windows were long and fairly painful. There were a lot of manual processes and not a tremendous amount of confidence. In evaluating solutions, they opted to settle on Unitrends, one of our purpose-built backup appliances, as well as our RxDA media controller, which enables them to write backup copies to disk, which they're still taking off-site. They were able to streamline that data center footprint. They're protecting their 10 terabytes or so environment with a 1 URAC appliance. But after deploying Unitrends several months down the road, a user had been file sharing, and one of their financial systems, the VMs powering their financial systems, were infected with ransomware. They were notified of the infection, and upon diagnosing the infection, quarantined those systems, wiped them, and then leveraged Unitrends instant recovery to reboot those VMs from a clean, tested backup, had them back up and running in production in about 15 minutes. Absolutely fantastic and a really key use case. Taylor Community Schools is one you can read more about on unitrends.com. We also have the slides shared as a resource in the audience console, so you can click in and read a little bit more about their experience. But just one of our customers that's leveraged their Unitrends appliance to escape a really tricky situation. So we've talked a lot about the local systems, protection from ransomware, the hardening of the backup environment. With the adoption of cloud and some of the shifts there, I wanted to talk a little bit more about our integrations and our cloud services. In a study by IDG, their cloud computing survey, in a lot of cases, they were looking at or asking technology professionals, CIOs, what overall services or use cases did they see for the cloud, both services that they were using today, services that they had planned to adopt or were already on the schedule for implementation, and what was on their wish list as well, kind of services down the road. And regardless of kind of the timing, across a number of their results, there were elements of storage, archive, disaster recovery being empowered by the cloud. In a lot of cases, the cloud has enabled customers to reduce their on-premise footprint. When you're leveraging a service provider with something like a DRAS, you're bringing in additional expertise. I recognize that for a lot of organizations and some with potentially smaller staffs, they may not feel that they have the manpower or the expertise to get started in the cloud, but there are a few different ways to deliver cloud services. But first, kind of wanted to establish where Unitrends fits in this picture. So you're going to be protecting, again, your local systems, physical, virtual applications with our appliance, either physical or virtual. In terms of getting that data off-site, one of the first backup copies is going to be that what we would call the cold copy or the archive, in which we're going to get it off-site in a manner that is disconnected from our production network. It could be rotational media, such as disk or tape. We could be replicating to a cloud bucket. You can archive data with Unitrends into AWS S3, Google Cloud Storage, Rackspace. It could be another storage device at an alternate location. Now that backup copy is great for long-term retention, for getting an air-gapped copy off-site, But critically important is the other backup copy that's going off-site to the hot site or to the recovery site. And that's what really is powering disaster recovery here for us at Unitrends, is replication to that hot target, either another Unitrends appliance that you are managing on your own in terms of a co-location or a DR site, or the Unitrends cloud where you're enrolling mission critical machines in our disaster recovery as a service. So again, we've got a number of different targets available, kind of depending on how much responsibility you want to have for managing these workloads. Certainly, as we had mentioned, those rotational media and other storage devices, cloud targets, or the Unitrends cloud, which is fully managed by us as the provider. So as I mentioned, because it's a proprietary solution, we're a little bit different in terms of how we've built this cloud and delivered it to our customers, but we want to make it an experience and a solution that's really predictable from a cost standpoint. In a lot of cases, those public clouds it can be tough to calculate exactly how much it's going to cost. You even go on the AWS simple calculator and it's something like 10, 15 fields or data points that you can enter. At Unitrends, we want to break down some of that confusion and make it really straightforward. The first key service that's enabled by our cloud is the long-term retention of data, but we license based on the data footprint, not the cloud storage consumed. All of the retention and the backup copies that will be stored are built into that upfront cost. So all you have to determine is how much data do I have to archive. If, for example, you need to retain student records for a certain number of years post-graduation, say 5 years, that represents 500 gigs of data or a terabyte of data. You simply license out that footprint, assign the retention period. The retention is already built in. We're managing that back-end environment. You know every year exactly how much that cloud storage is going to cost. There's no snowballing cost as backup copies continue to accumulate, as that retention is being built. It's all been built in, so it makes it very, very easy to predict and forecast that year-over-year cost. As I mentioned earlier, recovery from the Unitrends cloud is entirely self-service. There's no separate cloud gateway. You simply adjust a couple of filters in your local UI and you're able to see all of the recovery points that you have on the hot target based on the protected asset. You can mount NFS data stores or emulate NFS data stores to mount the backup files, kind of browse their contents and perform granular recovery of individual files and folders. You can recover the entire backup group all the way back to your full or synthetic full to initiate full recovery of the system. So for one of our customers in the city of Lynchburg, the fifth largest city in Virginia, they were struggling with long-term retention as required by the Freedom of Information Act. So the data had to be retained for a certain period of time. It had to be accessible for recovery. They had gotten initially a great deal on licensing with one of our competitors, but when it came time to true up, they said, well, hey, we can't maintain that standard cost for Enterprise Plus licensing. So they had to look for a more cost-effective solution. They actually found that Unitrends was about 30% cheaper, and they weren't sacrificing performance. In some cases, they were able to benefit from some of the management, automation, and certainly the cloud services. They opted to deploy our virtual appliance as well as enroll certain workloads for cloud retention. They were able to benefit from instant recovery of their virtual environment. They were able to meet that FOIA retention requirements, and they got automated reporting on the status of replication, on cloud storage environment, backup status, and so forth. So some great visibility that they didn't necessarily have with their previous solution. They were able to improve some of their RTOs by leveraging instant recovery and Unitrends replicas. So really just a great kind of end case there, especially when it comes to that cloud storage requirement. And because the cloud does carry a number of certifications and meets the mandates for certain compliance standards, we are able to assist a lot of folks in the SLED space, and they're able to leverage those cloud services. As we had mentioned, that recovery is super straightforward. You're looking at kind of your interface here. You filtered on the Recover tab. You adjust a filter to view the hot copies that you have on the target. You adjust the date range to determine where you're looking for, which backup or recovery points you're looking for. You identify the point you want to recover from. You either mount that and emulate that NFS share to recover individual files and folders and download those back, or you can import, as I mentioned, the entire backup group down to your source appliance to initiate full recovery of a system. So recovery from the Unitrends cloud is entirely self-service. There are no fees for ingress or egress. Perform as many recoveries as you need. Recovery in the Unitrends cloud is what we call our disaster recovery as a service for you, the subscriber, completely hands-free. Our team is performing that heavy lifting from installation and onboarding all the way back through reverse seeding and helping you gracefully fail back your environment. So for a lot of our customers, they're able to eliminate the cost and the complexity that comes along with managing a secondary site or a DR site co-location, and as well shift some of that CapEx expense for hardware and so forth into an OpEx model by delivering this through cloud services. Now, there are 3 levels of our service based on the recovery time objective SLA, and these are contractually guaranteed: a 1-hour RTO SLA, 24-hour SLA, or best effort, respectively. But you can mix and match SLAs to best meet your needs. For example, we onboarded a customer last year that they provide audio-visual rental equipment, production grade, camera, staging, lighting, and they only enrolled 2 of their key VMs in that 1-hour RTO SLA, their point of sale system and their financial software. If there were a disaster locally, they wanted the ability to try and recover or maintain front of store operations as quickly as possible. Some of the less critical systems, a little bit of the reporting, etc., were enrolled in that best effort SLA. They could be brought along a little bit more slowly. So again, you can kind of mix and match or choose the key workloads that you are enrolling, maybe just Active Directory, a couple of databases, for example. But when we talk about a white glove service, we're taking care to prepare the environment and really walk our customers through the whole experience. I recognize that this is a really busy slide, but engagement or enrollment in DRAS starts with the onboarding and consulting agreement, identifying the protected systems, determining the recovery time objectives, recovery point objectives of these systems, as well as starting to configure the cloud network. As we're seeding our environment and preparing for that declaration, we're going to take the steps to fully prepare the environment for that declaration before it ever occurs, mapping through the networking dependencies to mirror your production environment, the configuration of firewalls, QoS, provisioning out public-facing IPs where you may need to host a website out of the Unitrends cloud. We execute as well those recovery assurance tests against the backup copies that we're receiving to ensure that the backups that we're receiving will be able to use for recovery. So that testing is ongoing, and we report back to our customers regularly, either weekly or monthly, so that you know exactly how you're performing in terms of compliance objectives, RPO, RTO, as well as the results of the application level tests. We're managing the entire backend environment. You're simply paying on a per instance basis. There are no additional fees for storage or for that ongoing tuning. We're performing all of that on your behalf. So what that service looks like is your users are working out of the local site. The DR site in the Unitrends cloud is fully prepared and ready to receive that declaration. When disaster strikes and the local site is rendered unavailable, you make a phone call to initiate spin up in the Unitrends cloud. We will then start to boot and bring the environment online, provide you with an IPsec SSL VPN tunnel to reroute that user traffic. So now your users have been directed to the workloads that are running in the Unitrends cloud. We start taking backups as you're running production out of our cloud location. When you are ready to return to that local site, you're going to notify Unitrends that, hey, we're ready to rebuild. We're going to seed your most recent backups onto a brand new appliance and overnight that to you so that you can begin local import and start to recover these systems. Systems have now been recovered. We're ready to switch back service to the local site. You notify Unitrends, yes, I'm ready to fail back. We're going to tear down any last Delta changes, get those to you as well so you can restore those to the appliance and perform one last final sync. You restore those Delta changes to bring systems current and start to bring them online, reroute user traffic, back to the local site, and we send a new prep kit to capture any changes for future failover events, kind of the DR service at a glance or in a nutshell. The last piece and last kind of use case, also powered by the Unitrends cloud, is the ability or the need to protect remote devices and SaaS data even before this outbreak of COVID-19 and the shift to a more distributed environment. We were trending towards a more remote and mobile workforce than ever before, and there were industry experts that were even estimating that we'll be creating more data outside of the traditional data center on those end devices and IoT devices than we would inside the traditional data center by potentially the middle of this year, by as early as mid-2020. So it's critical, I think, that we take care to recognize that for devices that are geographically distributed and increasingly mobile, they're incredibly vulnerable to loss, theft, and even end user error. Unfortunately, for us non-technical folks, we are at a lot of times our own worst enemy. But it's important, again, to protect these devices. There's a 10% chance a 1 in 10 laptop will be lost or stolen in its lifetime. Of those stolen devices, more than half result in a breach of personally identifiable or protected or sensitive data. So when you look at the total cost on average to a business of $47,000, you might be thinking, well, Adam, I can replace an end user's device from anywhere from maybe $400 to $1,200, depending on the specs. And you'd be absolutely right, but also taken into account in that number there is the impact on productivity for both the worker and the IT professional, replacing that device, reimaging the device, et cetera, as well as the loss of data and the potential where there had been a breach of that data for penalties and fines. Again, we're looking at averages. There was a case in New York. An organization lost a laptop with protected health information. I believe the fines were like $700,000. They were absolutely huge in terms of penalty. So in addition to some of the security tools that you'll want to consider for these devices, multi-factor authentication means for encryption, you also want to ensure that the devices have adequate backups and data protection from that standpoint as well. So also enabled by the Unitrends cloud is what we call our Unitrends Cloud Backup. It's a direct-to-cloud backup solution for focusing on files and folders. So your end users' devices, PCs, work from home, desktop rigs and setups, those road warrior devices, laptops, etc. We've also got some functionality around basic file server data that can go direct to the Unitrends cloud to be a little bit of a longer RTO than our traditional cloud services. So it's an easily deployed solution for your workforce to protect Windows endpoints and other connected devices, really with the goal of eliminating lost productivity and wasted time for you, your technicians, and your staff. So under the hood, we've hardened our file level agent, really robust and innovated against our existing technology to prepare the agent for infrequent or less static internet connection. We recognize that a lot of these devices are mobile. They're not going to have the most reliant connections. We don't want failures or hanging jobs. So you set a basic RPO, and the agent, when the device is connected to the internet, will sense that and start to perform the backup. So you could say, hey, back up this device just once, back it up once a day, once every 2 days, and so forth. The agent will prepare based on the RPO that's set to take backups. On the back end, the same enterprise class cloud storage service that you've come to expect with Unitrends. We're managing the back-end environment. You're leveraging Unitrends cloud data centers. With the release of UCB, we do have support in the US. In the next 3 months, this will be available to our other global data center regions as well. Those will be launched in the first half of this year. But we really want to minimize the management. So we mentioned that opportunistic scheduling. It's fully self-service recovery, but you can also set up UCB to have that multi-tenancy. So if you want to give users access to the portal with their permissions restricted, maybe just to the backups of their device, you can do so that the users can perform their own recovery. You can integrate this with just about any endpoint management system, and you can recover to any device with the agent installed. So you can restore back down to the initial device. If that device was lost and you're re-imaging a device, install the UCB agent and then return the backups to that new machine. So you can perform some of that cross-user restore as well here. So in a lot of cases, folks are wondering, do I need cloud backup as well as for devices that are already being synced? And we would absolutely recommend it. Is all data synced when you think it is? If I looked at my iPhone earlier today, I think I was about 60% synced. There are a bunch of photos and contacts that, for whatever reason, haven't backed up to the iCloud or been synced with the iCloud. We're also taking backups here. It's not a syncing solution. You're going to leverage some of that WAN optimization, deduplication, compression, incremental backups as well. So we're securely transmitting as little data as possible, but it's not a file sync solution. It is a backup solution. So you may want to consider, is this needed for all of your employees or just certain ones? Maybe the executive suite protecting certain information that they've got, particular road warriors, et cetera. But also consider where SaaS applications may not have your data covered. All of these giants, Microsoft, Google, et cetera, operate what they call the shared model of responsibility. We took this graphic directly from one of Microsoft's websites here, where they're laser focused on providing the availability of their applications and of their services. They're less concerned so with the data. The users that you're bringing onto the tenant, the data that's being created, and the overall administration of the application on a day-to-day basis is your responsibility as the subscriber. So there are a myriad of threats that could cause data loss in an O365 application. Accidental deletion is the leading cause of data loss in a SaaS app. But consider the recycle bin is not an adequate backup strategy. Deleted items are retained for 14 to 30 days. From that point, they are unrecoverable. It's a hard deletion. With the average time from data compromise to discovery being about 144 days on average, there's a good chance that those deleted or lost items would be long gone before anyone even recognized that they were missing or that they were needed. There's also, it was put to me in a great way, that Microsoft has no way of identifying intent, and kind of a scary stat, but it's estimated that employee action is involved in anywhere from 25 to 33% of all cybercrime incidents. So Microsoft, for example, doesn't know if a bunch of deletions out of an inbox are someone performing a usual cleanup or a scorned employee that potentially has been terminated and is trying to attempt damage or harm before they depart. So you want to protect from internal threats as well as external threats. And to help you do so, we have what we call spanning. It's a cloud-to-cloud backup service for your SaaS applications, the O365, the G Suite, and Salesforce.com. Similar to all of the cloud solutions or cloud-based solutions that we've talked about today, management of the back-end environment is entirely performed by the spanning team. So you've got unlimited retention and unlimited storage for as long as you're subscribed to that spanning service. We manage that back-end environment for you. We'll auto-discover new accounts and start taking backups. We'll true up on the licensing later. We'll make sure that the users are protected. But you license spanning the same way that you do your O365 today on a per-user basis. You've got self-service recovery with non-destructive restores, so we'll create a new site or folder in which we're locating that restored content. End users can move it around and place it more specifically from there. You can restore to the same user, another user on the tenant, cross-restore functionality. The backups run on an automated schedule. So similar to UCB, where we manage the back-end environment, the Unitrends Forever Cloud, there are no changing fees. It's a very straightforward model. The spanning tool itself is incredibly clean. There's a demonstration. If you go to spanning.com, you can see a demo of the interface in just under 10 minutes. Really clean, great level of protection, and I would recommend it for anyone that's looking to fill in gaps along that shared responsibility model. Cloud-to-cloud backup service for your SaaS applications through spanning. Do an absolutely fantastic job. Now, the last piece here, and I recognize that, for myself in marketing, our sales teams did ask me to share some information with everyone in terms of programs and promotions that we have going on. We recognize that it's a really kind of tricky and uncertain time for folks, but with that being the case, we don't want budgetary impacts to impede or hamstring the ability to get adequate data protection, recognizing how important it is. So you can visit unitrends.com/promotions. But for all of the folks in SLED that have joined us here today, we are offering free hardware, 100% discount on our Recovery Series appliances through September of this year with the purchase of 3 years of support, and also 50% off on that spanning service, so $2 per user per month with a minimum of 50 seats and 3 years support, that good or valid through the end of June. So you can check out more information on those, and certainly, feel free to reach out to us if we can be of help during this time. We recognize again that it's a challenging kind of situation for folks, but we do want to make sure that you've got the tools that you need to protect your users and your data. So the last piece here, and where that slide deck has been posted, I do want to leave up some additional resources, some of the case studies that we referenced earlier, that you can sign up for our UCB preview program if you'd like to get an early look on at the Unitrends Cloud Backup Solution. We also have a number of trials and free tools available on unitrends.com. Just down the bottom there is my email address. If you have any direct questions or would like to get in touch to keep the conversation going, please feel free to reach out. You can connect with me on LinkedIn as well. But at this point here, I really do appreciate everyone's time again for coming on and joining us here today. I'll pass it back to David to see if we had any questions that came in as we move into Q&A.
Absolutely, Adam. We do have some questions for you. Let's see. Let me line up these questions here. And the first one that I see that came in, they're asking, do you have privacy, HIPAA, FERPA, PII policies or certifications published for review by potential customers?
Yes, Kevin, thank you for the question. And with regards, the Unitrends Cloud is a HIPAA compliant solution. We will sign a BAA or a business associate agreement upon request with regards to HIPAA. There is additional documentation that would be available for review from our engineering and support teams, but do know that Unitrends has master service agreements in place with all the cloud third parties, and those provide indemnification, in the event of a data breach. So affected customers will be notified if a breach occurs, but no third parties host or have access to data in the Unitrends Cloud. You can also check out the Unitrends Cloud FAQ, just a quick search Cloud FAQ on unitrends.com. We'll pull that document up, has some great information there as well.
All right, excellent, excellent. Next question here, do you offer licensing models for managed service providers?
So we do. I don't know if that was a question from a potential managed service provider partner or someone who uses an MSP to deliver services, but we do offer all of the services that we talked about today are available through an MSP model through our UMSP arm of the business. So we do have a direct business where you would buy the hardware or software, which you would own in perpetuity and would maintain a support agreement, or as a service is possible through our MSP partners as well.
Okay, all right, awesome. Next question, John is asking, he says, I saw that Google Nearline was an option for offsite cloud backups. K through 12 gets unlimited storage for free from Google without the need for Nearline, Coldline, and Archive. So is that version available to be used as a backup target?
So I would want to double check, but I thought that Google Drive was a little bit more intended for unstructured data. Now, if that service for K through 12 was being provided and the storage was Google Cloud Storage standard, we could integrate. I know that the two Google Cloud storages would be standard and Nearline that we can integrate to, but I would have to double check, and I'll make a note to follow up on that.
Okay, all right. Excellent. Next question from Alana. She's asking, does the direct-to-cloud backup work for Android devices, or is that solely for Windows devices?
So today, Alana, we're starting with this release on Windows. Windows 8 and up, 64-bit, and Windows Server 2012 are 268-bit and up. But I know that Mac and some other formats are on the roadmap for this year. So if Android is your preferred device, I would keep an eye or keep tabs on UCB over the next 3 to 6 months. We should have a lot more compatibility being rolled out very soon.
All right, excellent. Next question, Alan is asking, how many data centers or facilities do you have now, and do you have any outside of the United States?
So we do have multiple data center locations here in the United States, as well as offering cloud services in Canada, Germany, the UK, and Australia. There is just a note that we are compliant with each respective country's privacy regulations and data housing policies. So we do maintain data sovereignty. We will not be replicating outside of the countries of origin, but we are automatically replicating data to provide redundancy and safeguards against a cloud level outage or a cloud level downtime event. That redundancy is maintained within the same country as the originating data to ensure that privacy regulations and other in-house or in-country, data housing policies are being met and adhered to.
Okay, perfect. Let's see, another question here. It's a comment, really. They said data security has all of a sudden become a priority after our ransomware event. So of course now we're trying to get everything caught up to date with data protection and disaster recovery. So good feedback there. Michael also commented earlier that it took 2 full months to recover after their previous ransomware event. So scary times. All the better reason, in my opinion, to have a data protection solution with a really rapid restore and something you can test a recovery on. Another question that came in here, they're asking, how is the hardware and software licensed? Would I need both?
So from a licensing perspective, the hardware, the Recovery Series appliances are licensed based on the usable capacity of storage. So those models range from 2 to 120 terabytes of capacity, and they've got CPU and storage and memory provisioned and kind of scales with that capacity to support some of those larger environments with more concurrent threads, et cetera. So with that being said, with the hardware appliance, you get unlimited agents. You can protect any number of virtual machines, sockets, applications. It's all included. Whatever you can fit on the appliance, you're eligible to back up and retain. In those boxes, you can stack multiple appliances. On the software side, it's a per resource licensing model. So either per server, physical server protected, or per the populated CPU socket count of any hypervisor hosts. Usually with the folks that we're working with, it would be a dual socket host. So two licenses if you've got 2 CPU sockets populated on the physical host. So either per capacity or per resource are the options there.
All right, excellent. Can I protect Macs with Unitrends Cloud Backup is the next question.
So Macs, and I know that Alana was asking about Android as well. Mac is on the roadmap probably in the next 3 months or so. So I would encourage keep tabs as well for those Mac users and that direct to cloud backup. I know that will be being rolled out very soon.
Okay, perfect. Another question they're asking, where are spanning backups stored?
So spanning is actually storing their data within AWS. So you have some cloud redundancy, but the spanning tenant is located within an AWS data center. So you're not pulling anything down. It's not being stored in a private cloud or a manufacturer's cloud environment. They're within Amazon.
Okay, nice. And what happens if they're asking, what happens if they don't renew their spanning subscription? What happens to their data?
So with spanning, while you are subscribed, you get unlimited retention and infinite storage. We manage all of that backend environment, and you're just the per user subscription. If you opted not to renew with spanning, the data would be retained for 30 days and then purged. So you could pull down data or move copies to an alternate location and pull that out before the data was purged, or you've got access to those backups for 30 days. So it's not, hey, if we miss the payment and we're a day late, all the data's gone. Not so the case. There's a graceful period to help you migrate out of the service if that's what folks choose to do.
All right, excellent. Well, I think we've covered all the questions that came in. Adam, thank you so much for being on the event today.
Absolutely, David. It was always a pleasure, and thanks everyone again who was able to come out and join us here. I love reading through the comments. I'm glad folks were able to take some time to hear from us and learn a little bit. So best of luck, everyone, and thank you again.
Excellent. And thank you to Unitrends for supporting today's event. Don't forget that you can download the slides as well as a couple of other resources there in the handouts tab in the GoToWebinar console. The slides, by the way, have the slide that you see on the screen here. And if you open that slide, the PDF, all of the links are clickable in there. So you can just click on the links that you see. You can't click on the links on the screen, but if you download the slides, you can click on the PDF links there. Adam has generously put his email address even at the bottom of that slide if you want to reach out to him for more information. Before we go, I want to award the Amazon $300 gift card. That is going to Kevin Weir of Texas. Congratulations, Kevin Weir of Texas. We will reach out to you to deliver your gift card. If you would like to donate your prize value to charity, we would love to help you do that as well. Thank you everyone who joined us on today's webinar. We hope that you learned a lot and had a good time. We'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.